Bonjour tout le monde. So today I wanted to talk about something a little bit different, and that is the story of the puppy I found in the Dominican Republic, which was considered and still is considered a high-risk rabies country by the United States. And was I able to bring her to the United States when I left the Peace Corps? So basically, can you bring a dog from a high-risk rabies country to the United States? How difficult is it? So for a little bit of background, and I'm going to do my Peace Corps story part 2, which is still not out yet, but I was in the Peace Corps, and a little bit of this is already on my channel, and kind of towards the end of my service, which I didn't realize would be shortened, I found a puppy, and I loved her. Her name was Stella. And Stella was everything, my little girl. And so at the point at which Stella was, I don't know, 4 months old, 3 or 4 months old, I knew I had to leave the Peace Corps and I had to go back home because of something that came up. And so I had this little puppy who I'd known since birth because I was like visiting the mom when she was breastfeeding and everything else. But she was in a high-risk rabies country, and she was less than 6 months old, which is, you cannot bring a dog to the United States from a high-risk rabies country until they're over 6 months. So there was that too. And I was basically packing up and leaving, like, it was almost overnight that this was happening. And I didn't want to leave her in my community because dogs are generally, in the community I lived in, either chained up in a yard so that they don't die, or they're free on the streets having fun with other dogs, but then ultimately many of them get hit by motorcycles, and it's just the hard reality of life for dogs in some places. I knew she wouldn't do well on the street, and I knew that she would freak out if she had been tied up, so I didn't know what to do. And I really wanted to take her home. So that's kind of the background story. Now I'm going to talk about the rules, and so this is what I was up against. So I won't talk about all of them because there's a few random things or whatever, but from what I remember, so they had to be at least 6 months of age, which she was not. They had to have, I believe they had to have their basic shots, but the most important one was a rabies shot, and you had to have like a record of this. But then the weirdest one was that they had to have blood work drawn up to show that they had antibodies, I guess, for the rabies vaccine in their blood, to prove that they'd been properly administered the rabies vaccine and it had been enough time where they had those antibodies, right? But what was even more complicated about this is that that blood test had to be done through a certified laboratory, I guess. And some countries outside of the United States did have these certified, because I was like looking at, well, what's certified? Like, what laboratory can process her blood that's nearby? And there was none in the Dominican Republic. So I was kind of freaking out. And I was thinking, well, the other option was that you could bring them to the United States and they'd go into like a month or 2 month quarantine, but it's very expensive, and they would spend like, it was either a month or 2, in a cage without any human contact. And, you know, and they would just get their basic necessities met by a place that did that. And so I had actually been in touch with the place that did that, but it was like very expensive. And I was just picturing Stella like not being touched, just locked in a cage, and also just how difficult of a transition that would be for her. And I just did not want to do that. And also the money was a major factor as well. So I didn't want to hurt her, and I didn't want to pay thousands of dollars to do that. So those were kind of the options. So it's like, okay, I bring her, put her in quarantine, or I go through this crazy process to get her home. To add a little bit more to the background, I was also kind of like preparing this, like the process, like as soon as I got her, because I knew that I would eventually have to get her home. And I kind of had an inkling based on some things that I had found out that I might be going home early. I just didn't realize how early. So I was trying to line things up, and it just wasn't really seeming feasible though. And then somehow, by the grace of God, I got in touch with Best Friend's Pet Clinic. So I guess someone in our Peace Corps chat had like sent something about it, and then I just like contacted her, and I remember that the lady at Best Friend's Pet Clinic who owned it, she called me immediately. And so she was an American expat who lived in the Dominican Republic, and she kind of explained everything to me. And I was like, okay, I knew that they had a laboratory that they could send her blood to in the United States that they were in contact with, right? And also, they needed to have a microchip. And it was like it had to be a specific one so that it could be read at the airport or in immigration. Around the time that I knew I'd probably be going to tell Peace Corps I had to go home, I had been in the capital with my puppy, and she was kind of, I was starting her with this vet to get her get her in line, even though I wasn't sure how things were going to go down. And I had a friend visiting, so I left my puppy with the vet for a bit while my friend and I went on a trip. When we came back, it was like I had the verification that I had to go home. So I come back to the capital, and I know I have to tell Peace Corps that I have to leave. And so I remember I didn't quite have a plan lined up for my puppy, but the lady from the vet, my literal angel, told me that there were possible fosters. Like, I was freaking out that I had to leave, and I was like, shit, like, literally, what am I going to do with this dog? I cannot bring her to the United States. I also can't afford to board her indefinitely, and I don't want to do that to her. And so this angel, Jen, told me that she knew a bunch of people that were willing to foster dogs. So I'm like, okay, I got to go to the Peace Corps office, but I'm in the capital. I come back and get my dog, and we arrange. There's somebody that they'd found that was looking for a puppy, or to foster one. So I remember I had Stella. I took an Uber to this lady's house and our apartment, and I said goodbye to her there. And this lady seemed very sincere, but she was kind of lonely, I guess. And yeah, I just remember being like, okay, like I'm saying goodbye to her, and I may or may not ever see her again, depending on how things line up. Hopefully I do see her again, but it was like it was really difficult. So I say goodbye to the puppy, say goodbye to Stella, go to the Peace Corps office shortly thereafter, and I tell them I have to leave. And so they have to get you out of the country within 1 to 3 days. So they're like, okay, well, you need to get your stuff from where you lived. And so they arranged for me to take a car, or they had a driver for me, take me to my old home. So it was like the day after I dropped off Stella, and I literally just like threw everything in a bag and left. Like, it was crazy, like my whole life. And so yeah, I'll do a video about that though. So I'm in this like crazy moment where like everyone's crying. It's like so emotional. I'm like saying goodbye to people that are basically my family. And I'm getting in I remember I put my bags in the car, and then I get a text from the vet saying that Stella had been brought back to the vet because she ate a bunch of pills. And I'm in that moment like, holy shit, if this dog dies, like there's like literally nothing I can do right now. And I'm just like, this is insane. And it's like at the moment that I'm like just got in the car after like throwing all my stuff in a bag in such a like rapid goodbye, emotional, crazy moment. So I'm getting this text. She's saying that they're gonna pump her stomach or whatever. And so I didn't even know what to say. And then I remember like she called me and on a video, and I'm like in an area with like not the best reception, but luckily the video came through. And she's like, this is just to show you that Stella's fine, she's alive, we pumped her stomach, she's fine. And I see little Stella running around, and I'm like, oh my god, thank god. She's like, she's going to live with someone who works here at the vet who already really likes her, yada yada. And I'm like, oh my god, thank god. So I'm just like, okay, she's gonna live with someone that works at the vet. And literally just knowing that, even if I never saw her again, at least I know she's in good hands. So that was like a crazy moment. So anyway, I end up then going home like the next day. And I remember the first like month home, like I would think about Stella a lot. And I think, yeah, anytime I thought about her, I was just like, I had to stop doing it. I was like trying to send her Reiki and thinking about her and trying to like stay connected to her in an emotional sense, but like I could not do it. It was tearing me apart because I wasn't really hearing much from the vet or from the new foster family. So I was just thinking I might never see her. This process might never come through. But then as she's nearing 6 months, I'm kind of keeping in touch, and then things are starting to sound like they're lining up a little bit. So like, I guess we had to wait a little bit for the blood work because you had to wait 45 days, I don't remember how long after the rabies vaccine, to make sure that she had the correct antibodies and everything else. So timing's kind of starting to line up. Things are starting to happen. Her blood work gets sent. And yeah, so it's like, okay, this is finally happening. Everything's kind of getting lined up. And so it's like, okay. And then finally one day I have like all the paperwork together. And she just said, okay, just send it to, it's the CDC. So I'm like, okay, so I send everything to the CDC. They had taken photos of her teeth. There was like all these things they had to do. So it was like microchip number, the serology report, photos of her teeth, things of that sort. So I sent all that to the CDC, and I'm like, okay, at this point, she's like over 6 months old. If this is approved, I'm just gonna fly to the DR. So I had it set up where I was visiting New York, I think, at the time. And once, I think it was, I don't remember exactly how I did it, but basically almost as soon as I got approved, I booked a week-long trip to the DR. So I went to the DR. I reunited with her after not seeing her for 2 months, which was an incredible moment, and I flew her home. I mean, there was more to that story than that. During that trip, I went back to visit my host family, and I got to reconnect with a lot of my friends, so it was like a very special trip. It was also like a great closure trip for me, and greatest thing of all is that I got my dog. And so now, Stella is almost 1.5 years, and she's living very happily here in Virginia. She's like, what the fuck are you doing right now? But this is Stella. Say hi. I love her. So, the question, can you bring a dog from a high-risk rabies country to the United States, even with obstacles in your way and so many other factors? Assuming the dog is healthy and you can get everything lined up, yes, you can. And this is proof. Say bye. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he's gonna love that.